A world exclusive, Katie Hopkins, why were you banned from Twitter?
Because I used the phrase hung like a baboon. And I used it in response to a threat of a sexual nature of kind of violence against me. And many people will know conservative women like myself receive a lot of those kind of threats. And I sort of mocked back and said, well, he'd better be hung like a baboon. It's actually a line from, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Rowan Atkinson and Blackadder, but it's actually a line from Blackadder. Yeah, and it's actually in the Urban Dictionary as well. It's about testicular fortitude. And actually, I use it on my Twitter bio, my old Twitter bio. I use it about myself because that's a comment people say about me, that I have testicular fortitude. So I have been banned from Twitter for life because I reach 1.1 million followers, but because I used the phrase hung like a baboon. And that's the truth in black and white.
Unbelievable. Rita.
Is there any coming back from that? Because it is a massive platform, like you said, 1.1 million people. And it seems like if you're being threatened, and given the number of high-profile people on Twitter who are wishing death and destruction and hoping Trump is murdered, that there's no bans for them. This seems to be a very obvious double standard. Is there some recourse where you can say this is a line from Blackadder? It's, you know, it's well known in England. Could you be brought back?
Well, I think one thing, Rita, there's no coming back from this for Twitter, actually. I think it's highly embarrassing that they've banned someone like myself for using hung like a baboon. I also think for Twitter, what we've seen today, I've joined Parler, and I have to say, Parler, it's an app. It's to provide competition in the social media sphere. And there has been a mass exodus, the largest exodus seen from Twitter today in a single day to Parler. And I'm very grateful for so many people for being so supportive. And I have to say that when the truth comes out, as it will now, about why Twitter has actually banned me, and they didn't actually let me know either. They went straight to CNN, The Guardian, the BBC, and other media outlets to put that out there. So even if they were to have me back now, actually, I'm encouraging people to look for competition, look for new spaces, because how much longer can conservatives sit and just be censored? And please, this is nothing to do with free speech. We haven't had free speech in the UK for probably 10 years right now. Nobody can speak their minds. This is purely about needing competition and for rules to be applied fairly to all. So come find me on Parler, and remember that Twitter are now suspending people for saying hung like a baboon. And if you think of that phrase, think of me, because it will give me great pleasure.
Well, I hope Rowan Atkinson has come out in defence of you, and or will they now be after Blackadder? I'm sorry, it can't even be Blackadder, can it? It's whatever adder. So
no.
I mean, they'll get rid of that show altogether. That's gone.
Yes,
Forget
that
it.
has
One
to
of the
go.
great comedies. Put it in the bin with Little Britain and Chris Lilly and all the rest of it.
It's got to go.
Rid of it all. Get rid of it.
We might be able to call it George Floyd adder. George Floyd. Hashtag George Floyd Black Lives Matter adder. That'd be perfect.
We can, whatever. But I just want to show you this clip. We're a bit worried about the education standards in Britain at the moment. Churchill is another one. They wanted to tear down the statue of Churchill, Katie, and this young lady seemed to struggle with understanding precisely who Churchill is, or even if he's dead yet. Let's have a listen.
Should the statue of Churchill be there or not, do you think?
Well, I've heard many arguments on both sides. Some say that he's a racist, some say that he's a hero. I haven't personally met him, but what I would say is that that question of whether he should remain should be put to the community.
The lack of education in Britain is terrifying, that there are decisions being made by people who don't understand, you know, basic things like the fact that Churchill was a wartime prime minister. I find it extraordinary, Katie.
Yeah, it's actually quite bizarre. And when you hear them, these young people, you can hear they've been taught to use a lot of words while saying nothing. It's a skill set that's been driven into them by our teachers. And I say teachers in the loosest sense. Most British teachers only have about half a GCSE, half a qualification to their name. They're actually absolutely useless. And I should add as well, our British schools are still closed and will be till September. Most of our kids will have spent 6 months out of education. So thickos, like that girl you just highlighted, really aren't going to get much smarter anytime soon.
Well, maybe they might get smarter not being at school. James.
Well, yeah, look, just Katie, I just want to talk about, the case of the disappearing conservatives. Obviously they can't speak their mind. I'm wondering what's going on with Boris Johnson. Has he been silenced? Because he seems to have gone completely woke on all of this. The other day, last week, when there were all those protests in London and the fights over the statues, it seemed like he was more quick to condemn people from the so-called alt-right who were coming to defend statues than those who were tearing them down. Now I see that he has got some sort of Orwellian-sounding commission on racial discrimination and disadvantage coming down the pike. What is happening with Boris Johnson? From where I sit, he seems like he's been a tremendous disappointment. But what's your take on this, Katie?
Yeah, you're so right. And I feel like, if we go back to our earlier expression, hung like a baboon, if there was an opposite of that, which would be hung like shriveled raisins, that's exactly what we now have with Boris Johnson. He has lost any testicular fortitude he might have. They are shrunken to the size of tiny little fruits. And I really believe he's lost all of his chutzpah, all the stuff that we believed in him for, he's now against. We've had Churchill covered up by a little Muslim mayor. Boris said nothing. We've had Black Lives Matter swarming in the streets, smearing bodily fluids over each other, not allowed to say anything. Boris seems to be strongly going over to the left. The next thing I think Boris is going to come out, he's going to come out as trans or something just to try and fit in. I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous, and we've totally lost Boris Johnson. We're on our last stand here, guys. We need your help. We need more of what you guys are bringing, because we feel very alone and isolated in the UK.
Well, Katie, give us a quick rundown. Well, you've mentioned the lockdown, the craziness of that, the Black Lives Matter protests, taking a knee and people who menstruate. Very quickly, just give us your take on that. What's happening there? J.K. Rowling.
Well, really, it was more of a kind of a look at the hysteria of 2020. If we just glance back really briefly, top line, we started off with Wuhan flu and Chinese people sucking the heads off bats, and then the World Health Organization coming out saying, don't worry about that, won't recognize Taiwan, and maybe we still just love China and don't be nasty about the flu. We went straight into, rolled straight into lockdown, and lockdown was all about following the science, and the science has proved to be about as, accurate as my dyslexic 10-year-old at spelling. And then we went straight into Black Lives Matter, and George Floyd went from having a criminal record the length of my, longer than my first marriage, to being some kind of black Jesus in 8 minutes, 46 seconds. And then they had Al Sharpton in white polyester lecturing them on politics at the funeral. That is not what a grieving family needs. And now we went to this place where J.K. Rowling is being deplatformed from everything. Her publisher even is threatening not to publish her next book because she objected to the fact we're no longer allowed to be called women. We have to be called people who menstruate. And I tell you, I have been called a lot of things: horse-faced old cow, wrinkled ballsack, whatever. I will not be called a person who menstruates anytime soon. Even though I am a dried up, shriveled old prune, I still will not be called someone who menstruates.
Well, on that, we definitely won't be calling you someone who menstruates. We've got to leave it there. But because you can't be on Twitter, you can't put this wonderful photo of you and your dad up because it's Father's Day in the UK. So we're just going to quickly put up a photo of your dad there. Happy Father's Day to Mr. Hopkins. And is it Mr. Hopkins?
Long-suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, my long-suffering father who doesn't believe in salad and thinks Italian is a foreign food.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Katie Hopkins, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
In Britain.